What's up, guys? It is Carly here, bringing you day 29 of my 31 days of horror, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about a movie that I actually talked about the first one too on the Body Bags YouTube channel, so if you want to check that out, you can over on Body Bags. But today I'm talking about that movie's sequel, and that is Waxwork 2, Lost in Time, and I believe this is from the year 92 or 91, something like that. But anyway, Waxwork 2, it follows the events of the first movie. It's taking place right after what happened in the first movie, so I would definitely say right off the bat to watch the first movie before watching this, because it is kind of a continuation in a way, even though there's not major details or anything like that, I guess you could say. But anyway, so it's taking place that night, and the two people from the first movie have survived and all that, and they're trying to go back to normal. But when the girl goes home, and I'm so sorry, I completely forget the names, that is something I suck at, but it's been a few days since I watched this. But the girl, she goes home, and a wax hand follows her home and ends up killing her piece of shit stepfather, and of course she is the prime suspect here, and she's basically about to be considered completely guilty because her only alibi is that this hand is what actually killed him, and that's not a very good alibi. So her and the guy, they go back, and they go back to the museum, and they go back through time and all that, and try to gather evidence for this girl to try to prove her innocence and show that there's these wax people and all that. And that's kind of what's going on. They go back through time and all that, and they're going through all these different stories, and their sort of personas change, and the way they're acting kind of changes as well throughout the film. Yeah, this movie, it's very, very similar to the first one. I would just say it's a little more amped up in a way. At least that's how I kind of felt it was while watching it. It definitely gives a lot of nods to older classic films such as Frankenstein and things like that, so that's pretty cool. I wasn't huge on the first one, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not too into like fantasy, just over-the-top fantasy type of stuff in my horror movies, or just fantasy films in general, and that's a lot of what these movies are. They're also more comedic than horror, I would say. There are some moments that are a little darker, I suppose, but for the most part, it's a very lighthearted type of film, and I really didn't find it to be overly funny. There were a few moments that made me smile, but it's just not really stuff that resonates well with me. And then, like I said, the fantasy stuff I'm just not big on, and it's much more amped up in this movie. I feel like the plot isn't anything special for that reason. It's literally like they just got out of this nightmare, and then they go back into it, and then the whole story kind of repeats itself. It's very much like a rehash of the first movie, just with a little bit more stories and characters and things like that going on to make it a little bit more interesting. But that's kind of it. I do like the idea of this girl kind of trying to find evidence to prove that she didn't kill her stepfather, because it's one of those cases where no one believes her, and in this case it's for obvious reasons. A lot of times I don't really love that plot, but in this case it works because she has no other excuse, so that did work for me. Overall, it's a good movie. I think it's a fun movie. I think a lot of people probably like and appreciate this one, and they would if you're into these types of movies, but I'm really just not into the whole fantasy / comedy stuff in my horror movies. Sometimes comedy works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it just wasn't really working all that well for me, but I think it's a decent sequel. It doesn't really add too much to story-wise or anything like that, but it's kind of cool that it's a continuation. So this movie I give 6.5 out of 10. I think that would be a fair rating from my standing. So 6.5 for Waxwork 2. Thank you guys once again for joining me for day 29. We're almost done here, and yeah, I'll see you for day 30.